To make a new layer in Illustrator, the simplest way is you come to your layers palette. Does everybody remember how to find your layers palette? It's located in your set of palettes on the right. And at the bottom of your layers palette, you have a number of buttons. And one of them says Create New Layer. Just click that. And now I have a new layer. It's called Layer 2. Now, I don't want to leave my layers unnamed. I'm fine with leaving paths unnamed. It drives you kind of crazy naming every path. But layers you should name, so you know what the paths within that layer correspond to. So layer 2, I'm going to call, that's Caleb. I'm going to call it Caleb Photo. Okay? And I'm going to move the, I'm going to move this layer down to the bottom. Right? You can move layers up and down simply by clicking and dragging here. And I'm going to take this linked file and put it onto that layer. Okay. I'm going to change this layer 1 and call it Caleb Tones. Okay. Now, I got to tell you, I don't want the tones right now. I'm going to go back to my photo and do some new drawings from that photo. So one of the things I can do now, since I separated my photo onto a separate layer than my tones, right? Here's my tones all wrapped up. I don't have to look at all of them if I want to manipulate them all at once. If I want to not see them, I can turn the visibility off simply by clicking the eyeball next to that path. Next to that layer. And it makes all the paths within that layer invisible too. You see how when I click that eyeball, these all get grayed out. Right? Okay. So it's affecting the visibility of every path on the layer. And that's one of the real powers of layers. You can just hide everything. Okay? So I'm going to hide everything. I'm going to make a new layer, actually, and I'm going to call this layer here, I'm going to call this Caleb Highlights. Now, when I say highlights, I just mean places that I want to have a line. There's certain times when you're working and you're like, man, this is a line. This is not an area, right? I've been telling you to define areas. Find areas of like tone. But what if there's like an antenna or a crease that you kind of just want to turn into a line? Say like this thing here, or this right here, or just to sort of really add attention to a specific place. What you can do is use the pen tool to make a stroke, or I want to show you another tool that lays down strokes. And it's called the pencil tool. The reason why I show you the pen tool first is because that's actually the tool you should be using for the majority of path construction. The pencil tool, it's really easy to sort of do something and then not really know what you're doing and have something weird happen the second time you try to do something. Because you're not creating closed paths all the time. When you're doing the technique I'm showing you, really have to be aware of what path you have selected and what your tool's about to do when you click next. Okay, the pencil tool is located right here in your toolbox. It shares the toolbox with some other tools. We'll talk about those tools at a later date. We're just doing the pencil tool today. And the pencil tool, I'm going to give myself a stroke definition, and I'm simply going to maybe trace something. Give myself a line. Give myself a line. Now, I'm making new paths each time I click and drag, right? This is kind of like what you think the pen tool probably should do in the first place, right? But this is really easy. You click and drag, and the path will follow your, I'm clicking and dragging, and it's following where I'm telling it to trace. Now, there's a few risks with this. Notice how my pencil tool, let me zoom in here. My pencil tool icon, my mouse pointer pencil tool icon, has basically two different states. One is continue the current path, and one is add a new path. And if you start clicking too close to the path that you just created, when there's no X, it'll continue, did I just do my path over now? It'll continue your path in a really weird way. It might remove some of your path. It might, so like, you see how this is acting weird? If you're not conscientious of what it's going to do next, it will redraw your path for you. Okay, and that can get quite frustrating. Also, sometimes it might continue your path if you have a certain setting set. So just be aware. If something weird is happening, like let's say I want to draw another path here, and this one just sort of continues and connects to there. I can't actually get it going. But let's say just sort of like does that, right? Like that's weird. I want to like continue my path and just sort of replaced it. What you need to do is make sure you're not selecting that old path. Like let's say I really wanted to have this come up here. Oh, I did it good that time. This come up here. Oh, did it good that time. It's kind of unpredictable, honestly. I'm doing it right. If something weird is happening that you're not in control over, unselect the path that you just drew last by using your selection tool, click off of it, and then click back to your pencil tool, which is the letter N. Why is the pencil tool the letter N? What's the letter shortcut that's occupying? What's the tool that uses the keyboard shortcut P? Pen. Yeah. So MN. I don't know why it's N. Pencil. Anyway. So now that I have these lines put in, what I'm going to do is view them alongside the shades that I put in. And you can see that it really adds another sense of dimensionality. Now, have I done a great job here? No, I've been talking about how pencil tools work. But by adding a few clear lines on top of your tones, you create a real sense of space and depth within your picture. Illustrator has a tendency to make pictures that look kind of flat, tonality-wise, and you really have to work against that. You want your pictures to look dimensional, and this is one way of doing it. Add a pencil stroke on another layer, and then turn your layer of tones back on to see how it interacts with what you have. Do you have to use pencil strokes? No, but please try to use the pencil tool. Okay. Questions? Okay. Let's work on this until